Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. If I sound a little bit crazy today, it is because I am getting over a cold. My son, my toddler, he recently started preschool. We put him in Montessori part-time. So he started that last Monday. I kid you not, by Wednesday, he came home with his first cold, which he did fantastic. He was like maybe a little bit congested, but other than that, his energy was normal and he was totally fine. I, however, was just knocked down. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I was knocked down on Saturday. So he came home with a cold Wednesday, and then I started picking it up maybe like the day after, 2 days after. And by the weekend, by Saturday, I was like, I cannot leave this bed. Like, my husband was totally fine. He didn't get sick at all, and he was taking care of or hanging out with our son for the most part. And I was in and out of sleep for most of Saturday. So I'm still recovering from that. It's been a few days. I'm feeling like 100% better. Well, like 80% better, but my congestion is still lingering. So, anyways, please excuse the voice for today. Um, I do want to talk about my son going to school and how that's kind of like impacting my life. But before I do, I did want to give a quick update, kind of an update. It's not really about me, but it's about one of my family members and it has to do with the whole energy healing thing. So the plot thickens. Okay. So I don't know if anyone who listened to my first episode, if you remember specifically me mentioning, I was told I was a healer. I was told I come from a long lineage of healers on my dad's side of the family. And this is a piece that I can't remember if I put in or not, but I was told that it was passed down to the women in the family. So I have a niece who is very close in age to me. She is, I think, only 4 years younger because my sister is significantly older. My parents had two kids, then an age gap, and then two more kids. So basically, I grew up with my niece. And she is someone who has always been very intuitive. Well, in the sense that, like, she's always been able to see spirits. It's not like a always turned on type of thing, like wherever she goes, she sees spirits, but like throughout her life, there have been instances where she's been able to see certain things. So I think she has um, clairvoyance. But, anyways, when I first learned that I was an energy healer and I went down this whole journey of learning Reiki, I didn't tell very many people in the beginning. And she, aside from my mom, was probably one of the first family members I told. And it was because she was in the hospital and I went to her to go do some Reiki healing to see if that could be supportive for her at all while she was in the hospital dealing with something. And I had not yet told her that I could do this or that I was doing this. So I kind of just showed up to the hospital and I was like, listen, here's my story. I gave her like a very, very quick pitch. And I was like, can I try this? And she was like, no, actually, I believe you, Lisa, because I have this memory. And she proceeded to tell me this memory that she had of when she was around like 5 or 6 years old. And she remembered her mom getting hurt and telling her mom, it's okay, mom, I can heal you with my hands. So she had this memory of her being a child and knowing back then that she could use her hands to heal. And so we were like, okay, interesting. And then I proceeded to do the energy healing on her. And she had, um, I won't go into like too many details, but it was like something with her stomach that she was dealing with. And so she's laying down, her eyes are closed, she's resting, and I'm working on her stomach and I'm pulling energy out of her stomach, like lower vibrational energy. And she doesn't know what's going on because her eyes are closed, but she tells me, Lisa, I'm seeing garbage fly out of my stomach. Like her eyes are closed, but she's having visions. She's seeing basically like what's happening, even though she can't see what I'm doing. Does that make sense? Like, it was so fascinating to me. That was probably the first time that I had done energy healing on someone who had a level of sensitivity to energy, or like can also be classified as like intuitive. So that was really interesting to kind of have like that real-time feedback of like I'm not even touching her body. I'm clearing energy from her stomach, and she's having this vision of garbage flying out of her stomach. And then after, when the clearing was done, she was saying, "Oh, I'm seeing," how was she saying it? She was saying like, "I'm seeing my stomach and it looks like this like pristine, clean kitchen." And she was describing what the kitchen looked like to me. So, so fascinating, and another example of her clairvoyance. So, okay, fast forward to probably like a week ago, she gives me a call and she's like, "Lisa, you will not believe this." Basically, she was in therapy, or we'll just say like a form of therapy, and I'm guessing her therapist was intuitive. She didn't know this going into this or for the majority of her sessions, and her person was basically like, "Hey, I think you're a healer. I think that you are an energy healer. I think that you should learn Reiki." And she was like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." And I was like, "Did you tell her about like me and everything that I've been experiencing?" And she was like, "No, I didn't even touch on that." So, anyways, all this to say, just like the plot thickens. Like, I just wanted to share this to document, like, I don't know, just this, like, what a crazy update. It's not even about me, but just like how, I don't know, maybe like more confirmation that this really is like real and really is something within my family line. And I don't know, it's just, it was wild to me. And it's totally up to her of whether or not she chooses to pursue this or not. Um, I know that she's like has a lot going on in life right now. So, like that's totally her decision. But just yeah, just again, like leaves me speechless every time. Like this is just so crazy. But aside from that, back to my son starting school last week. He's been doing wonderful. He's been doing great. But what I wanted to talk about in this episode is something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is trying to find a balance of structure and flow in my life. And my son starting school has been bringing this a lot to the forefront, because him going to school part time opens up a lot of time for me to focus on this podcast and my energy healing and just figuring out, what comes next for me. And it's also opened the door for me to think a lot more about how I want to structure my days. This is a really interesting topic for me because this has just been one of the more challenging things about choosing to live intuitively. Like from the very beginning, I went from like when I was working before I quit my job, I had a lot of structure. My days were very structured, maybe overly structured to the point where I wasn't really living much. It was just I was working through a never-ending to-do list. And it was structure that was put in place for me. And what I mean by that is, I mean, I think that our society as a whole, like from the time that we are young, going to school to maybe we go to college after, maybe we get a job, whatever it is, we're usually typically given the structure, right? Like these are your classes, you're in school, these times, these hours per day, here's your homework afterwards. Maybe you have extracurricular activities, and then you move on to college, and maybe you have a little bit more autonomy and you're learning to live on your own and independently, but there still is a sense of structure there, right? You still have classes, you still are working towards a degree, you still have school during specific hours, maybe a little bit more flexible with your schedule, but still, again, like still some structure that's put in place for you. And then you move forward into working at a job, typically for most people, and like 9 to 5, we all know that that grind. And usually within your job specifically, you have roles and responsibilities and tasks and just a basic framework of how to do your job or how to structure your day, whatever, right? Like again, the structure is somewhat given to you. Again, maybe there's some autonomy depending on your type of role, but there's still a structure given to you and you are working within that. So that was my whole life, just always a structure that was provided for me, and then me trying to do my best and work within that. Then choosing to quit my job and say, I'm going to live from my intuition. There is no blueprint to living by your intuition. You can look at someone else doing it and look at their example, but it's not something that you necessarily copy, because what their life looks like when they're living from their intuition is based off of their soul's journey, like the lessons that they're here to learn, and whatever they are choosing to do in this lifetime, and what they choose to focus on. And their intuition may look really different than mine and how they receive information. So, I mean, even me doing this podcast, you can be listening to me and my journey and the things that I'm learning, but your journey may be very different to mine, right? Like, no two journeys are the same. So, going from all of this structure to then attempting to live intuitively, it felt like, I don't know, like aimlessness for quite some time, of me trying to figure out what it means to live by your intuition. And for a long time, there was no structure. It was like, okay, I'm just going to follow my highest excitement moment by moment. And I think that that was necessary in order for me to have a level of exploration and to prioritize excitement and joy, because it wasn't something that I had been focused on or that I had been doing for a large portion of my life, or just for like years prior to that. So this shift from so much structure to no structure, it was like, it was really challenging to navigate. And I think it was also just a necessary part of the path, just to just like dismantle the structure, prioritize joy again, and then now moving into this stage of like building structure back into my life and trying to figure out, how do I build structure back into my life in a way that still prioritizes the joy. So I've been thinking a lot about this, and I don't necessarily have any specific wisdom on how to balance structure and flow in your life, because it's something that I am figuring out. And I think I also came to the conclusion that maybe there isn't really any wisdom. It's more a very personal process to everyone that just requires a level of trial and error and exploration to figure out what works best for you, because everyone's different. And again, everyone's goals are different and the way that they work best is different. And so people are going to have or work best under maybe different ratios of structure versus flow in their life. So I thought I would just talk a little bit more about how I'm approaching building structure back into my life and some of the things that I think about while I'm doing that. And maybe just give some examples of what that looks like for me. So, when thinking about building structure back into my life in a way that serves me, one of the questions that I keep coming back to, that I like to ask myself, is, in my dream life, what are my thoughts, my habits, and my routines? And this question came about because a question that I started asking myself way back in the beginning of this journey, before I left my job, I started playing around with this fun question and asking all of my friends, if you were to win the lottery tomorrow, we're talking billions. We're talking, you do not have to worry about money ever again, okay? If you won the lottery tomorrow, what would an average day in your life look like? And I really wanted to emphasize what an average day would look like, because I think that that's a question that I was asking myself. It was like, if I was to take myself out of survival mode and really have the freedom to do whatever I wanted and to spend my time however I wanted, how would I do that? And I think that we often focus on the things that we have or the things that we would buy. Like, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would buy this house and I would live in this house and I would have this car. And it's just like a lot of like, this is what I would have. But I was coming from this perspective when I was still working of like, I have everything I could want. And I'm realizing it's not it. And it's because it's not about what I have, it's about how I'm spending my time. So it began this whole question of like, okay, well, if I had the time, how would I spend it? And in the beginning, I didn't know. And so that has been part of like the exploration and the journey of just figuring out like what brings me joy? What am I excited about? Like, what does light me up? Like, how would I want to spend my time in an ideal scenario? And so when I think about my dream life and creating my dream life and what are my habits and routines within my dream life, I keep coming back to this question of like, in this ideal scenario, how would I spend my time? And I mean, even like something simple as like this podcast, I feel like if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would keep doing this podcast. So it's like that's how I know that I'm on the right track. That's how I know that that's something that belongs in my dream life. And I think about things like I have a child who I adore and I want to spend time raising him, but I also want time to work on things like this and figuring out this intuitive journey that I'm on. So, in my ideal scenario, maybe he goes to school part time and that gives me time for both. Okay, great. So we've got that down. We He's in school part-time. And in my dream life, I make time to prioritize my health and I exercise several times a week. So that has been something that I have implemented into my schedule and have built a structure around. So these are some examples of how I have been building structure back into my life in a way that serves me with a focus or an emphasis on what are the habits and routines that I keep in my dream life. In my dream life, how do I choose to spend my time? And I think that by going about it this way, it's a way of pulling my dream life into the now. It's like through this question that I'm asking myself, through this very intentional structure that I'm building, I am choosing to live my dream life now. And that has brought me so much more joy than focusing on what I would have, all of the things I would buy, focusing on how do I spend my time. That is what is bringing me more joy. So I feel like now I'm finally starting to come to a place where I'm feeling a lot more balance of structure and flow in my life. And I gave you some examples of building structure, but in terms of flow, I mean, I think just in general, the overall trajectory still feels a little bit flowy, right? I'm still following my intuition. I'm still following the next step. I'm not really sure where that's leading me. We're leaving some room for the unknown, the joy, the excitement, some room for following where I'm guided or where I'm drawn to. Like there's still room for all of that. And then the structure helps to make sure that I'm flowing in a specific direction. I have this visual of like a river, which is just like a perfect example. It's like the water is the flow and the river, the basin, is that what you would call it? A basin? I don't know. That word just came to my mind. A basin. That's not right. It holds the river. It's like this container and it ensures that it's moving in a specific direction. So the balance is necessary and the process of finding that balance is necessary and a lot of trial and error. But I'm at a point now where I'm feeling really excited about my days and I go to sleep at night and I'm like excited to wake up the next morning and complete what I have planned for the day, whether that be the workout and the podcast or whatever else it entails. So, yeah, I just wanted to give that little life update, just something that I have been thinking a lot about or something that has been top of mind, what I've been focused on a lot, I would say, over the past month as my son has started school and I've been given a lot more time to get back to some me time and really dive more into this next part of my journey and like what my career is going to look like from here on out. So that is all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye.